Let's go ahead and get started. This is Silicon Valley, so it goes without saying, everyone is busy. That's what we do here. So to begin with, we are going to have we have a procedure that we do at the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. We're very interested in solutions and information, and not so much blame and accusations. And that's true not just because we're talking about DAs, but that's true for all of the forums we had. So we're proud to continue that tradition. So for each round, we have had questions submitted by the audience, and those have been randomly selected by the candidates before we started. We'll begin with a 2-minute introduction from each candidate, and then we'll go into the questions. Excuse me. Each candidate will initially present a 2-minute statement on the given topic that they have drawn. Other candidates will follow with 1-minute clarification on how their own views may differ or agree with that presentation. And then the initial presenter will do a 1-minute close on that statement or topic. We'll do that, we'll do 2 rounds. So that's a 5-minute cycle for each topic. So we get to expand a little bit, but not endlessly on each topic. And then as time allows, and if there's interest, we are also entertaining the idea of having questions from the audience and having the candidates address those that may come to mind as we proceed. With that, let's go ahead and start. We're gonna, this is all random, but we're gonna start with Sajid for your opening intro statement. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Rick. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. My name is Sajid Khan, and I'm running for Santa Clara County District Attorney. I'm the proud son of Muslim immigrants from India who raised me and my siblings here in the South Bay. I grew up in Milpitas in San Jose, went to San Jose High School, actually spent a summer at De Anza College, and am now raising my 2 young sons here in the South Bay. For the last 13.5 years, I've served our county and our community as a deputy public defender, fighting for the rights and dignity of our community's most marginalized people. And in that time, I've witnessed our system perpetuate the harms of mass incarceration, inflict generational trauma on our communities of color, and fail to keep us collectively and sustainably safe. And it's for those reasons that I'm now running for Santa Clara County District Attorney, because I'm committed to healing systemic racism, fighting mass incarceration, and building a justice system that ensures and protects the dignity and safety of all people here in Santa Clara County, which is the place that I've called home my entire life. When I'm elected as your district attorney, I will be fighting to invest in mental health treatment and services and alternatives to incarceration that will ultimately keep our communities safer. I will fight to end the school to prison pipeline. I will hold police accountable when they violate the lives and dignity of our people. And I will honor survivors of harm by ensuring access to trauma-informed care for all community members in Santa Clara County. I'm really grateful to be here and look forward to this conversation. Thank you so much.
Hey, Rick, you're muted.
It's got to happen at least once, right? Jeff, you're next. If you could give a 2-minute presentation on your candidacy, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. As your district attorney, I work hard to pursue justice, promote reform, and enhance public safety. We've been through a lot in our county. The VTA and Gilroy Garlic Festival mass shootings have left us grieving. My office continues to help victims with counseling, food, and shelter. We are survivors in this community who rise stronger. When a Stanford swimmer raped an unconscious young woman and received a light sentence, I wrote the law that guarantees the next Brock Turner will go to prison. I filed hate crime charges against robbers that violently targeted Asian women. I convicted 3 jail guards of murdering a mentally ill inmate. I've created centers that serve domestic violence survivors and abused children. Under my leadership in this county, we test rape kits faster than any other jurisdiction in the United States. We have a crime strategies unit that I started, which has helped us to use data and solve hundreds of violent crimes, particularly gun crimes. And yet, at the same time, under my leadership, we have reduced incarceration, cut our jail population in half, and we've done that with more mental health, drug treatment, accountability, rehabilitation, and second chances. I believe that justice comes from a balanced and thoughtful approach. I'm proud to be endorsed by both police officers and criminal justice reformers. The Mercury News has called me the real deal, a prosecutor who values justice, a public official with good ideas, and the ability to implement them. I go to work each day determined to serve you. I humbly ask for your vote and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Daniel Chung and I'm running for DA. I am a Santa Clara County resident. I grew up in Milpitas in a single parent immigrant family. I attended local schools, including public schools, as well as Valley Christian and Bellarmine. And through the help of financial aid and teaching jobs, I attended Harvard as well as Columbia Law. I am a career prosecutor who is committed to prosecuting crime. I take my job very seriously and take my oath very seriously as well. And my priorities are fighting hard for public safety, victims' rights, and systemic changes. When elected, I will enforce laws sincerely and to the best of my ability and promote balanced reforms. I am running because in the last 12 years, DA Rosen has lost both integrity, competence, as well as compassion. And I want to restore those qualities in our county. I think it's inappropriate when our culture in the DA's office overlooks prosecutorial misconduct and does not discipline prosecutors appropriately. I think it is inappropriate when the DA's office overlooks police misconduct and does not take accusations against police officers seriously. I am someone who is going to prosecute and prioritize repeat serious violent offenders. And I hope to earn all of your votes. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. I think generally we'd like to focus on the office rather than the people, but thank you all for your, all three of our candidates here today are people who are working very hard to make the justice system work, which is an incredible endeavor and is seldom appreciated. So thank you all for your service. And let's begin with the questions. Random drawing before the meeting started. Sajid, you're going to be starting with the first question. Do you support Prop 47? How would you change the law if you could? Prop 47 was a legislative reform of lessening penalties for certain crimes. And just for those of you who don't know that, but I'm sure Sajid, you know that, but go ahead and start. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Rick. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I've been a public defender here in Santa Clara County for over 13.5 years. And in the early 2010s, as a relatively new, but becoming more experienced public defender, I witnessed people getting sentenced to state prison for simple possession of methamphetamine and simple possession of cocaine. I witnessed people being sentenced to prison for petty thefts. And that was the reality of Santa Clara County jurisprudence. We were a fundamental part of our crisis of mass incarceration in this state, where we have collectively continued to prioritize the punishment and incarceration of people in our communities as opposed to the healing and treatment of people in our community. And that resulted in a mass incarceration crisis that required Supreme Court intervention and required the necessary interventions of Prop 47 to start to whittle away at this crisis of mass incarceration that was inflicting generational harm on communities of color in particular, and not keeping our communities safe. And this was all happening under the watch of our incumbent district attorney. And so I am very much a proponent of Prop 47 because we cannot jail and imprison our way to public safety. Incarceration is not the answer to mental health, mental illness, and substance abuse issues and unremedied traumas in our communities. We need to reallocate resources away from what we spend on incarcerating people, which is upwards of $80,000 a year in our state prison facilities, towards interventions that heal people, that address root causes of crime, and ultimately make our communities safer. And that's why I am a proponent of Prop 47 and will continue to advocate as DA for other legislation that moves us in that shared direction. Thank you.
Thank you for your timeliness, Sajid. Next up, Jeff, if you want to comment on that question, Prop 47, what would you change?
Yes, Sajid left out that I supported Prop 47 and was one of only 2 elected district attorneys and 2 sheriffs in the entire state to do so. And I did that very proudly, very publicly. I did TV ads in favor of this proposition because I think that it's important that the punishment fit the crime. And for drug addiction and drug possession of personal use amounts, a felony was too much punishment. Felony prevents someone from getting educational, housing assistance. It prevents you from getting many jobs. And it just doesn't really describe conduct that is low-level theft or being addicted to drugs. Secondly, I believe very much in reducing racial disproportionality in the criminal justice system. And this proposition did that. It resulted in thousands and thousands of fewer African-American and Latinos being incarcerated and helped to reduce disproportionality in our jails and in our prisons. Some people say that this has led to more crime and led to smash and grab robberies. It's not true. Smash and grab robberies are robberies. My office is vigorously prosecuting those offenses. The threshold of the from a misdemeanor to a felony of $950 in California is one of the lowest actually in the United States. 40 states have the threshold at $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, or $2,500. And so California is simply, raising it to a level that's appropriate, but still quite low in terms of being able to charge people with felonies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Daniel?
Thank you, Rick. I am generally in disfavor of Prop 47, and I think a lot of amendments need to happen to make the system run better. I think one of the most significant strains that Prop 47 put on our system was that it made it much more difficult to prioritize and actually prosecute repeat offenders, serious offenders, and violent offenders. And that's because it excluded a lot of those offenders and only made it possible to prosecute certain super strike offenders under the $950 threshold. Both Jeff and Sajid believe that Prop 47 had nothing to do with the increase in property crimes, but that's simply not true. We are seeing the effects of pendulum swinging types of criminal justice reforms. Pendulum swinging types of criminal justice reforms are not sustainable because what ends up happening is that we go from one extreme to the other extreme, and as soon as something happens, we revert straight back to the other extreme. You know, I've been walking the streets of Cupertino as well as the 14 other cities and towns of our beautiful county of 2 million residents. And one of the things that I've been heartbreakingly hearing is the stories of business owners who feel like the DA's office, as well as law enforcement, doesn't care about them, is not really taking the steps necessary to concretely address their harms. For example, I met a business owner by the name of Nancy who basically said that she can't repair her front glass store doors anymore because criminals continually break into her door. And so these types of stories are prevalent in our community, and we really need to address them through reforms.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. And then 1 minute wrap up, Sajid.
Yes, thank you. With all due respect to Mr. Rosen, part of the reason that our state needed the intervention of Prop 47 was because our incumbent DA's office was complicit in and responsible for the overcrowding in our state prisons and the racial disparities that Prop 47 was seeking to address and remedy. In addition to that, we heard this idea of punishment fitting the crime. We also heard about from Mr. Chung that there is no deterrence or something to that effect for people committing harms in our community. That's the metric we need to move away from generally. We have to understand that crime is not happening in a vacuum and that our systems of responding to crime with incarceration, with punitive measures, is not making us safer. The state of California, the United States, incarcerates more people by per capita than anywhere else in the world, and we're still feeling the feelings of unsafety right here in Santa Clara County. So we need a different way forward, and that way forward is investing in addressing the root causes of harm, like mental illness, substance abuse, and trauma, so that we can prevent harm from happening in the first place, and then ultimately prevent it from happening again when it does occur in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sajid. All right, so I think we've figured out how this works. So the next question, Jeff, goes to you, which is, as DA, what crimes would you prioritize for diversion, restorative justice, or substance abuse treatment?
Thank you. In the DA's office, we have many diversion programs for first-time offenders and nonviolent offenders. So when I took office, we filed more than 40,000 criminal cases a year. Now we file 30 to 32,000 criminal cases a year, and we divert several thousand cases a year to drug treatment or community service, anger management classes, cognitive behavioral mental health. And we do these for crimes for individuals that are first-time offenders, for individuals who have committed nonviolent crimes, for young people. In terms of our restorative justice efforts, we are beginning a restorative justice program in South County. And through these diversion efforts and drug treatment and mental health, we've reduced our jail population by 50%. And we've also reduced the state prison population by 1/3. In terms of juvenile crimes, we very much use diversion for most, but not the most serious violent juvenile crimes. And for juvenile crimes, we've reduced the population of our juvenile hall and juvenile ranch from 400 when I took office to fewer than 80 today. And most days there's no girls in the juvenile hall. And we've done this through vigorous use of drug treatment, of mental health, of community service in lieu of jail or incarceration. In fact, Santa Clara County, under my leadership, has the lowest crime rate of any large county in the United States, and one of the lowest crime rates of any county in California. And that's because of our focus on serious and violent crimes and our use of diversion and rehabilitative programs for individuals that are drug addicted or have mental illness problems or are committing low-level nonviolent offenses. I think it's important to distinguish. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And I want to respect everybody's time and make sure everyone gets a chance. So I'm going to be speaking up a little bit more to try to keep us moving. Daniel, if you would respond to that question about priorities for diversion, restorative justice, and substance abuse treatment.
Thank you. So crime is up in our county, both statistically, anecdotally, perceptually. People are afraid of crime, and we see the revolving door of crime. Just this week, we had an interview with the Mercury News where Jeff Rosen graded himself an A despite violent crime and property crime on the rise. He sees no room for improvement in our community. Right now, we have to prosecute and prioritize repeat offenders, serious offenders, and violent offenders. For people who commit first-time offenses, for people who commit non-violent offenses, non-serious offenses, I am in support of alternatives to incarceration. I am in support of diversion programs. I think treatment is a great opportunity for people to get second chances, especially our youth. I spent years teaching many middle school students and high school students, and youth have incredible potential to change, grow, evolve, and learn from their mistakes. And I think all of us have benefited from second chances in our lives. So for these types of individuals, I think it's very important to have these opportunities to have a second chance.
Super. Thank you, Daniel. Sajid.
Yes, thank you. It's the evidence tells us that restorative justice programs, diversion, addressing root causes of harm is what makes our communities safer. We've had an incumbent DA that claims now to be initiating a restorative justice practice, but has had 12 years to do so and has failed. We know that most sexual violence in Santa Clara County, in fact, across the state and across the country, goes unreported. Many survivors of sexual violence don't want to participate in traditional prosecutions. So we need to expand our toolbox to include restorative justice models so that we can address real harms like sexual violence and other crimes as well. We need to expand diversion as opposed to putting limitations on diversion. In my experience, our incumbent DA's office contests mental health diversion, contests diversion grants, where we are trying to address the root causes of harm as opposed to merely criminalize and punish them. So it's critical that we expand diversion and restorative justice and ultimately utilize tools that will make our community safer.
Thank you. Great. And Jeff, back to you.
Sure, and I'll try to follow the rules that you've laid out and not attack the two people because those are the rules that you laid out.
Thank you.
I think it's important for us to make a distinction between people that we are afraid of because they are violent and repeat offenders versus people that we are angry with or frustrated with. And I believe that jail and prison are for those that we are afraid of because they are violent and because they keep offending. And the change we've made in my leadership as DA is not just throwing a bunch of people in jail who are drug addicts or committing low-level offenses, and we're just angry or frustrated with them, because jail is not the answer in those cases. We have to try to use drug treatment, mental health, and other rehabilitative techniques. But I certainly take my obligation as DA to protect the public quite seriously. And for serious or violent offenses, those are the people that we need to send to jail and prison. And we can, and I will continue to do that, whether they are, whatever the serious offense is. And so I think that's the framework to think about. People we're angry at versus people that we're scared of.
Thank you so much. And again, as we've said, the informed electorate is good, and generally the electorate is not informed by personal attacks. So I appreciate the candidates and your time of being here and helping us understand the issues that you work with every day. Next is Daniel, retail crime. I don't know what to say about it, but there it is. You get to lead us with retail crime, organized or not, shoplifting, smash and grab. What can the DA's office do?
People are tired of it. And every day when I'm out on the streets, I see it. The business owners know that law enforcement and the DA's office doesn't do anything. And they are sick and tired of that kind of change. And so we need to have a DA's office that takes those crimes seriously and is willing to prosecute them and deter those types of crimes from happening. We also need to be more present in our neighborhoods and communities. The prosecutors are never out in their communities and don't know the neighborhoods that they're prosecuting. They don't know the interests of the business communities as well as the neighborhoods and their unique and specific problems that they're seeing in these neighborhoods. We live in a large geography with different diverse groups of people and different types of business districts, and our prosecutors have to be out there and really understand the communities that they're serving. Moreover, we need to change the way we charge cases. Under DA Rosen, there are no training or standards that clearly outline how to charge cases properly. And when there is an assembly line format of prosecution, things are going to fall through the cracks. And business owners see this. They see that restitution takes forever. They see that criminal cases linger for years. They go through generations of prosecutors who are not invested in the cases, who are not held accountable for those cases. And that does fall squarely on DA Rosen. This is not a personal attack. It's an attack about how the office is actually running and the specific policies and platforms that we are debating and talking about and fleshing out as we sort of promote our business interests as well as our public safety and fight for victims' rights.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. It goes to Sajid. 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm a proud Santa Clara County resident. I'm actually sitting in my mother's home right now in San Jose. I'm raising 2 young sons here. I've lived here all my life, and I'm feeling the same feelings of unsafety in our community. It's hard not to miss the signs in our parking lots that tell us to lock up our valuables. It's hard to not hear about the residential burglaries that are happening in our community. And as a public defender, I have represented countless people accused of these types of harms. And I've recognized that these harms, again, don't come in a vacuum. And our continued overuse of jails and prisons as our only response to these harms is not making us safer. We're not feeling any more safe under this path. And it's critical that we address and invest in addressing the root causes of harm, which include mental illness, substance abuse disorders, poverty, lack of educational and vocational programs, so we can prevent retail theft and property crime from happening in the first place. And then when it does occur, that we hold people accountable. Yes, we do prosecute people. We honor survivors of these harms, but then we respond with interventions that actually make our community safer in the long term, as opposed to merely attaching an arbitrary jail or prison term that spits people right back out and doesn't keep our community safe.
Super, thank you. And that's time. To you, Jeff.
Under my leadership, our office, in fact, has prosecuted many hundreds of individuals for retail theft, for smash and grab robberies. In fact, it was my office's crime strategies unit working and gathering together all the police departments in the region, which helped us to arrest, prosecute, and put behind bars many of the individuals involved in the most recent smash and grab robberies that occurred around Christmas time. We have community prosecutors in our office that work in the community. There are 6 of them that work in heavily crime impacted neighborhoods to try to reduce and prevent crime before it happens. We have helped to create business associations, specifically the Little Saigon Business Association, to better serve residents of our community. And myself and many of our prosecutors speak at and interact with chambers of commerces all over our county. And finally, the charging philosophy of the DA's office, which is very well known to all of our prosecutors. 4 questions. Was there a crime? Do we know who committed it? Do we have strong evidence to be able to persuade a jury unanimously beyond a reasonable doubt? And finally, is charging the right thing to do? That's our standard that we use every day. Our conviction rate is over 99%. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. So the next question goes to
Do I get
Sajid.
to finish that?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Yes. Daniel, you get 1 minute close. Thank you.
So having a 4-point system of charging cases is not enough. We need ethics and competence in the way we charge cases. I have heard supervisors in the office say that we need to charge cases simply to scare defendants. We just need to charge cases just to get plea deals. This kind of ethics comes from the very top, and unless we change the ethical nature of the office, we're not going to have competent prosecutions. We're going to constantly be dropping the ball. Just a few weeks ago, we had a homicide case dismissed at preliminary hearing, where the standard of proof is just probable cause. That is either a failure of investigation or a failure of ethics, and we can't have that happening. Prosecutors in our office see that it's okay to sleep with witnesses, to withhold evidence, and to have the balls dropped on homicide cases, and you will be forgiven, you will be overlooked, everything will be fine. You can just continue your regular way of doing things, and that's unacceptable for our business communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. All right. I think we got this now. We're on to the next question. And that is Sajid. As DA, how would you address the changing technologies used in crime? This is Silicon Valley. How does that affect your responsibilities?
Oh, it's critical that we have a DA's office that is keeping up with technology and its ever evolving nuances. And it's critical that we have a DA's office that is providing training to its deputy district attorneys, its investigators, its staff, that ensures that we're able to keep up with harms that are either occurring on or through platforms like Facebook or other platforms in the evolution of our technology. It's critical that we partner with companies and leaders in Silicon Valley to provide those trainings and to ensure that we are collectively up to date in how to respond to these harms and how to prevent them from happening in the first place. I want to zoom out on this question a bit more because I was actually in court this morning, and the pandemic has actually forced us to embrace technology in a way that we hadn't before in our criminal legal system. And that includes allowing for virtual court appearances for people as opposed to having individuals wait around in court all day, having to miss work, having to miss school. It actually has helped witnesses have to avoid coming to court for continuances. And so embracing technology and how we can make our systems more efficient, how we can make our systems more people-friendly, how we can make our systems better so that we are not interrupting individuals' lives and ultimately creating more stability or instability in our communities that doesn't make us collectively safer. So as DA, I will fully embrace being competent on and utilizing evolving technologies, both in preventing harm in our communities, but also in providing justice for all people in Santa Clara County.
Thank you. Jeff, to you, 1 minute on technology.
First of all, while I'm taking notes here on paper, we actually now use very little paper in the DA's office because we've converted our files electronically. Our case management system is electronic, and we're using data in a very powerful way. We realize that there's all this information that we collect in police reports, and police have cases for a few days or a few weeks. We have the cases for months or years. So we mine that data for information that helps us to solve crimes and helps us to direct police resources. License plate readers is something that's being used very effectively throughout the county to catch more car thieves and robbers and burglars. The crime laboratory, which is run by me and as the district attorney, we have the highest international accreditation, and we look at cell phones and computers, DNA, everything, you name it. And finally, the DA's office runs the REACT High-Tech Task Force, which is one of the leading task forces in the entire country that specifically combats high-tech crime, cryptocurrency theft, and we were recently just honored by the Homeland Security Secretary for our work. Lastly, we do a fair amount of remote work these days because our network is strong and we're able to allow people to work from home, and we were able to do that a lot during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Daniel, to you.
Criminals are really smart. They not only know our laws, but they're on top of technologies and they're way ahead of us. And so if we as law enforcement don't keep up with them and keep pace with them, we're going to fall behind and we're going to be very ineffective at prosecuting cases. IT infrastructure and technological changes is something that I've been advocating for strongly in the DA's office. And over the last 12 years, DA Rosen has not invested in a technologically updated office. We are in the heart of Silicon Valley, and it is embarrassing that our case management software can't open more than one document at a time. It looks like we're looking at microfiche back from the 70s and the 80s. It is embarrassing that our prosecutors don't gather digital evidence immediately from the very beginning of cases. And that's because we don't have sufficient charging, training, and standards. DA Rosen in the past has sufficiently just boasted about how the issuing unit just issues charges left and right for other prosecutors to later investigate. That's not appropriate. How many times has the DA's office lost 911 calls, video surveillance, social media posts, Snapchat posts, and other types of things that are going on in Web3 and social media that our prosecutors are not equipped to change and prosecute?
That's time. Thank you. And again, a reminder to everyone, the personal attacks are not helping the electoral process. If it's part of your campaign, we understand, but it's not part of this forum. And I think that's everyone. Back to you, Sajid, for a closure.
Yes, thank you, Rick. A couple additional points or responses. First is it's really critical that as we attempt to keep up with evolving technology, especially in pursuing the investigation and prosecution of harms, that we do so constitutionally, that we do so with an eye towards the freedoms that we are all afforded to be free from unreasonable government searches and seizures, and that we, as a DA's office, cultivate a culture that is committed to legally, constitutionally collected evidence, even in this strata or the sphere of evolving technologies. And that will be my commitment as district attorney. We also heard about the crime lab being a part of the district attorney's office. That's something that I think is actually very much problematic, that we have a crime lab that is intertwined with our current district attorney's office, that is not independent. And that manifests in crime lab witnesses coming to court on behalf of the DA's office, or essentially in coordination with the DA's office, and there not being a clear separation of powers. And that doesn't create an environment for safety, environment for justice, and for integrity in our system.
Super, thank you. Thank you for everyone for your timely responses. We'll begin with the next question, which is, Jeff, what does the Santa Clara County judicial system do well? As DA, what can you do to help it function better?
This is a tricky question for me. You know, my wife, Amber, is a Superior Court judge. And so I want to be careful. She doesn't hear criminal cases, so there's no conflicts. I think that our bench is quite diverse. I think it's representative of our community. And by that, I mean, not just gender, it's close to 50-50, not just racial and ethnically and LGBTQ+. But I think it's also somewhat representative in the sense that some people in our community are more conservative, some people are more liberal, and I think that the judges in criminal reflect that. I think one of the weaknesses we've seen in our court, and I've been very public about this, is that it takes us too long to work through our cases. And so while the end result is convictions in 99 or more % of the cases, it's taking us a year to 2 years to 3 years in some areas to reach that result, which is slower than in many other counties in our state. And so there's been a number of meetings. I have a very good relationship with Molly O'Neill, the public defender, and with our presiding judges. And we've put more we've made more courts available for criminal, which has started to reduce the backlog of cases we had caused by the pandemic when we weren't able to try very many cases. So I think that our court is responding and trying to work through things more quickly, because justice isn't just the end result, it's also the process. And when it takes too long to get to that result, then the whole thing wasn't really just or fair. It's not fair to the defendants, it's not fair to the victims, it's not fair to the community. So one of the things that I'm continually working on is trying to speed up our court system. In the DA's office, we almost always announce ready, we want to proceed, we want to move things along, and we want to encourage the judges to try cases and resolve them more quickly. It's a work in progress.
Super. Thank you. I think next to Daniel, 1 minute about what the system does well and what you would do to make it function better.
Our judges are fantastic with helping our jurors understand the system better and really making them feel treated with respect and dignity. You know, a lot of people come to jury service with a lot of hesitations, but once they see our judges and the respect and dignity that they're afforded through the process, they really enjoy the process. They learn a lot about our democratic process, and they often want to come back and even participate more in our democratic process. So that's something that I really give credit to. How can we make the system work better? How can we reduce the backlog? Well, one thing is DA Rosen does not push for speedy preliminary hearings. Under 859B, we have the power to push for preliminary hearings to go on a speedy basis. On a regular basis, we allow the defense bar to waive time, delay cases, and age these cases out until we really can't prosecute them. We need to change that. The DA's office needs to prosecute cases vertically so that there's accountability. Judges see us coming into court not knowing what's happening in cases. They go, who's the assigned prosecutor in this case? And finally, with regards to bail, we need to hold judges accountable if they're doing actions that threaten public safety, including exercising peremptory challenges.
Thank you. Sajid, what does the system do well? What would you do to help it function better?
Yeah, as a Santa Clara County resident for my entire life, and as someone who's served this community as a public defender, I'm really proud that our county has invested in our criminal legal system, invested in one of the most cutting edge and well-resourced public defenders offices to hold our system accountable, to hold our DA's offices accountable, and has invested in a DA's office that has a budget of over $150 million. And it was one of the most well-resourced DA's offices in the state. But it's my belief, and based on my lived experiences in the courthouse and in the community, that many of those resources have been misallocated and misutilized through the practices of the pursuit of the death penalty, through the pursuit of prosecuting children as young as 14 years old as adults, through the pursuit of unproductive, inhumane 3 strikes enhancements, through the practice of using cash bail to hold people in our jails, not because they're too risky to be released into our communities, but because they're too poor to afford to get out. That doesn't make our communities safer. And Mr. Rosen referenced 99% conviction rate. A lot of that is a result of coercive plea bargaining practices, overcharging that are going on every day in our courthouses to this day. And so that's my response to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeff, 1 minute back to you on the same question.
Very briefly, the Public Defender's Office is quite well resourced in our county, and I've worked with the Public Defender Molly O'Neill to make it that way. I think that important to have a healthy criminal justice system, you need to have a well-resourced Public Defender's Office and a well-resourced District Attorney's Office. Certainly, if you look at the size of our county, close to 2 million, the number of prosecutors we have is actually way below the state average. Part of that is that we're able to work very well with community-based organizations and rehabilitative programs and mental health and drug treatment to keep crime low without the necessity of having more prosecutors. So again, I think our court is a work in progress in terms of trying to speed up the resolution of cases. And that's something that we work on collaboratively. We don't yell, we don't point fingers, we're not divisive. We understand we're in a system and we want to make it better. And so we do that by rolling up our sleeves and engaging in the work. And that's what I've done.
Thank you. All right, the last question that we have from that was submitted before this event goes to Daniel. What important issues related to the DA's work would you wish people were more aware of? What important issues are not in the headlines?
So systemic racism is real, and before we can tackle it externally, we have to tackle it internally. DA Rosen has assembled one of the least diverse executive staffs in history. Over the last 12 years, not having invested in a strong and diverse talent pipeline, his entire executive staff is now entirely white. Him, his chief, and all 6 of his assistant district attorneys who make systemic decisions and huge policies are all white. This is in Santa Clara County, the heart of Silicon Valley. These are the individuals who are going to be determining life decisions based on a cursory review of police reports and rap sheets and no input from the trial prosecutor. If we really want to change the world and change our society, we have to change our office first, and that involves rethinking how we want to structure our office and how we do prosecution. Our office should be based on competence, not on loyalty. There should not be a jingle in the office that says, if you are not chosen by Rosen, you're going to be frozen. That kind of cronyism cannot exist for there to be diversity and talent in our office. We cannot have a prosecutor, a chief prosecutor, who goes to Asian prosecutors and says and compares their hairstyle to North Korean dictators. We got to clean house first before we can change the world. And that's what I really want everybody to know, because it's not in the headlines. It's only something that you experience when you're in the system, when you experience the retaliation and harassment, and when you call out policies and platforms that are incorrect. Instead of addressing those issues with specific counter arguments, he merely resorts to gaslighting. Just this past week, DA Rosen said that, Daniel, I hope you get help. You know, I feel sorry for you, in response to very specific criticisms I had of the office. He stigmatizes, weaponizes mental health, and that's not the type of leader that we want in our community, who's going to fight for diversity, who's going to fight for victims. If we care about racial justice, care about the race of defendants, but also of victims.
Time. Great, thank you. Time. Sajid, what important issue related to DA's work do you wish people were more aware of?
Yes, there's two things I want to mention on that front, Rick. First is the area of juvenile justice. I saw a question in the chat about the school to prison pipeline. I personally represented a 14-year-old boy who was prosecuted and punished as an adult before our state legislature responded to that type of practice by outlawing the prosecution of 14 and 15-year-old children as adults. That was happening as recent as 2016, right here in Santa Clara County. And our incumbent DA continues to prosecute children as young as 16 and 17-year-olds as adults. And I think that we often overlook that that is happening to this day right here in Santa Clara County. In fact, between 2010 and 2014, 177 children in Santa Clara County were prosecuted as adults by the Santa Clara County DA's office. The second thing I want to mention quickly is the 99% conviction rate. I alluded to it earlier. That is often a function of overcharging, of coercive plea bargaining, where people are threatened with additional penalties or punishments unless they take an offer, where people are threatened with expiring offers, where people are threatened with additional punishment if they pursue their rights at trial. And so those are the realities of Santa Clara County, and that's why I'm running for district attorney.
Thank you. We will have time for closing statements, but next on this, Jeff is.
Yes, one of my favorite poems is If by Rudyard Kipling. And one of the couplets is, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to set a trap for fools. So that's a little bit my response here. In terms of the diversity of the DA's office, when I came in, there were 8 men in my class. Today, under my leadership, half of the DA's office's prosecutors are women, half are men, half of those in management are women, half of those in management are men. In fact, of the prosecutors I have in management, 5 or 25% are Asian American, 3 are Latino, 3 are African American, 3 are LGBTQ+. It's actually a very diverse district attorney's office, which represents our community. And the things that I would like the public to know are our parent project, our Bend the Arc grants, our High School Explorers program with children. And the last thing I'll say is that in the case referenced by Sajid of the case he handled as a 14-year-old, he in fact wrote to our office and said, I'm grateful for your office's consideration and thoughtfulness in negotiating the charge and sentence my client received. That's what he said then. Now he's running for office. It's different.
Thank you. Daniel, 1 minute closure. Again, we understand your your passion, but if you could please wrap up 1 minute.
So Matt Mahan, who is running for San Jose mayor, and I had a panel discussion last night, and one of the most important things that we discussed is, we often talk about racial justice and it's just focused on defendants. But when we look at victims of crime, they often come from low-income backgrounds. They often come from racial minority backgrounds as well. And so when we fight for racial justice, we can't just be pursuing one or the other. We need to be finding balance in everything in life. Through my experiences, I grew up in a single parent home, and, my mom made me fiercely independent. I grew up with my grandparent, and, my dad committed suicide when I was 8 years old as well. So I know how much we need balance in our system. They've taught me that it's important to have balance, right? And to be guided by balance and collective wisdom as we move forward. And so when we re-envision the criminal justice system, we can't just take a hard left turn. If we want to just look at empirical data, right, to look at what leads to best criminal justice outcomes, San Francisco is a failure. If we elect super left-wing types of individuals into office and let them enact their policies, often they're not going to enforce laws, and they're going to create their own laws that leads to a revolving door of criminality. And so when we re-envision racial justice in our community, let's also think about finding balance, and finding that balance starts with us inside the DA's office. And until we can really reform what's going on, we won't be able to change what's happening externally.
Thank you. Now, we are over time, and I had promised our candidates who are generous with their time that we'd finish at 1:30. So in deference to that, I don't think we have time for questions from the audience. I think the candidates see these questions. I would like to end with a 1 minute close, just so everyone, each of the candidates can hear what's being said. We will be dropping into the chat the contact information for all of the campaigns. So Sajid, why don't you do a 1 minute close, and thank you again for your time and your service to our community.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, and thank you to the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce for this hosting this discussion, for all of you taking time out of your day to be here and be part of our democracy. We saw an outpouring in our community that we had never seen before after the killing of George Floyd. We saw people in Cupertino rallying for Black Lives to Matter. And when my campaign is a response to that, that uproar in our community streets was in response to the continued dehumanization of Black people and people of color by our criminal legal system, including right here in Santa Clara County. It was a response to the continued dehumanization through our mass incarceration epidemic, through the use of police brutality that has disproportionately impacted people of color right here in Santa Clara County, which is the place I've called home my entire life. And I'm now running as a response to that, and as a response in an effort to move us into a new era of shared dignity, safety, justice, and healing for all people in Santa Clara County, and to undo the harms of police violence, to undo the harms of mass incarceration, where we have inflicted real harm on communities of color for decades right out of Santa Clara County and have not made our communities safer. And with your support, with the support of the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce and other community members, I will be the first person of color to be elected as Santa Clara County District Attorney in the 171-year history of the office. And my experiences are the lived experiences of people in this county, and I will be a representative for all people in this place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sajid. Next, Jeff?
Yes.
1 minute close, thank you.
Sure. I think what's more important than whether someone is the first person of color to be DA, or in my case, the first Jew to become DA in this county, I think I don't want people to vote for me or against me because I'm Jewish. And I think that to elect someone as a prosecutor who's never prosecuted a case is not really helpful to our system of justice. I think that what you need in the DA's office is the the balanced use of both hard power and soft power. Hard power is arrest, prosecution, conviction, jail, prison, and that's important for public safety. At the same time, we also need to use soft power, the Parent Project, preventative programs, mental health treatment, drug treatment, to address root causes of crime and to prevent crime from happening before it begins with. Essentially, the people that are running against me are emphasizing only one of those things. And when you do that, you get neither. And frankly, this session reminds me a little bit of the joke of the guy at the restaurant who's eating his dinner. And at the end of the meal, the waiter comes over and says, how was it? And the guy says, the food was terrible and the portions were too small. Thank you.
Thank you. And Daniel, you get the last word.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you for everyone for attending today's presentation. You know, I'm very passionate about the issues that I discuss because I've seen them in real action inside the office. And at the end of the day, my whole campaign is dedicated to the people of Santa Clara County. At the end of the day, when you're a prosecutor, you go to your job every day hoping to do the right thing for the right reasons in the right way. And when that doesn't happen, as a prosecutor, it disturbs your core because your core identity is about fighting for truth, fighting for justice. And when you see your leaders and your supervisors and your assistant district attorneys not carrying that light forward, you get very upset and you see a system that's broken and you see that transformative change can happen. And so when people vote for me, I want people to know that they're voting to restore justice, a justice system that works for defendants as well as victims, a justice system that's balanced, a justice system that cares about people and their struggles. Because we can talk about all of these ideas in kind of an esoteric kind of ivory tower way, but at the end of the day, this impacts real people. And I want prosecutors who are going to care about people and be compassionate and have integrity and competence as they carry out their duties and as they fulfill their oaths in office.
Thank you, Daniel. And thank you to all of our candidates. As I had said at the beginning, the history books are not full of republics and democracies because they take a lot of work, a lot of deliberate effort to create and maintain. So thank you all for your work. It's certainly not appreciated by all of us, but thank you one and all. And so you're welcome to leave. We're going to be talking about Cupertino business, but I am going to say I'm very pleased that I was able to keep a forum of three people who professionally speak for a living to within 3 minutes of the deadline. I think that's an accomplishment. So you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you all. We'll see you all on the ballot June 7th.
June 7th. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.